Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Mint's Navigating Compliance with Technology series, powered by Clear. Now, our theme for today's session is on automating compliances in the manufacturing sector to put India on the roadmap to a $5 trillion economy. Now, the $5 trillion target that India has pegged for its economy by 2024-25 is ambitious to say the least, and the manufacturing sector is seen to play a major role in reaching that figure with the entire thrust on Make in India in a post pandemic world. Now, over the past decade, India's manufacturing sector has transformed into a high growth area, contributing significantly to the GDP through domestic penetration as well as a creation of export opportunities. Now, the sector was badly hit by the pandemic, but saw a quick rebound by adopting digital technologies wherever possible and seeking intervention from the government to overcome its challenges. But even as the sector has shown impressive recovery in 2021, the focus for this new year is on efficiently scaling up to address pent up demand while managing the increase in manufacturing costs. Now, even as the government's push to localize manufacturing source results in subsectors, some key issues around financial management processes for companies to stay compliant still remain. Today's session features CFOs from a cross section of companies in the manufacturing space to take a deep dive into this theme and brainstorm around how manufacturing setups need to automate tax, GST, and export compliances to enable them to focus on their core business operations for powering growth. Our lineup for today's conversation features Gurvinder Singh, Chief Financial Officer at Mitsubishi Electric India, N. Srinivasan, Chief Financial Officer at Suguna Foods, Manan R. Shah, Chief Financial Officer at Sayaji Industries, Ramakant Ponapalli, Chief Financial Officer at Bhima Jewels, and Rohit Razdan, Chief Business Officer at Clear. Thank you everyone for joining us on this talk today. And before we begin, here's a message to our viewing audience to fill out a short survey form and submit it to us at the end of this talk. All right, let's first try and understand how this sector has shaped up in the past 2 years and the challenges, especially from a financial management perspective, that have risen. So, Ramakant, we'll start with you. Now, considering the gems and jewelry sector, they virtually came to a standstill with no footfalls in stores during the pandemic. How did Bhima Jewels manage the situation around, say, working capital and high inventory holding costs, especially around mid August in 2020? When gold prices peaked to still grow its revenues by 14% in FY21. Take us through the challenges from a financial management perspective that you faced.
Yeah, thanks for this opportunity. And the major challenge which we faced is our fixed costs, which have to be paid compulsory, like salaries, rents, and other overheads which are there. The first thing which we have taken up is to manage the working capital. So that is the first foremost challenge which we faced with the coming expenses and zero revenues. So what we have done is we have spoke to major of our landlords and asked for a waiver of the rentals. So the rentals were waived off for us for a 2 months period, or a discounted cash flows were given for a few months. And also we had some discounted outflows for manpower also during that period. And then later on we paid up when the pandemic came back. So in a way we had reduced the expenses during those times, and then cope up with the requirement of cost, cope up with the cost requirements, and then cash flow was effectively managed during that time. And we have taken care of the gold prices increase with the hedging options. So we hedged our gold prices and taken options and saved the stock over costing with the hedging options, so that we have saved to the extent of around, I think so maybe our stocks are huge, and then we have saved the cost in that way also. Major challenge which came in is to the COVID protocols at our showrooms. So there were so many protocols which have increased our expenses, like we should have a sanitizer, we should have a thermometer. I mean, all those protocols, and we should have a less number of customers in the organizations. I mean, in the showrooms, so that the limit of number of customers also limited, and the number of people, because jewelry sector, when the customer come, they will come in a group of 10 people or 15 people to purchase. So we've been we faced some of the challenges from customer point of view, that so when we say you have to come 4 people only to the showroom, there will be a little bit resistant from the customers also. So that way we managed very well, and in fact I can tell you the sales for the first year and second year, where first year of pandemic and second year of pandemic were overachieved when we compare to the non-pandemic years actually.
So 2022, how do things look? If you
2020
overachieved 2020 during 2020 and 2021, 2022 as demand comes rushing back, are you ready to capture that demand?
Yeah. We actually opened 2 more showrooms and we renovated 2 more showrooms during this year. It given us an opportunity to grow up in geography wise actually. So we have increased our showrooms and developed our showrooms, and we are now doing the renovation of the showrooms during the closure time, so that we will be catering to the customers for the new modern era. And our 2022 is looking very positive. I think by January end, our sales turnover of 2021 will be achieved. So February, March will be the extra sales for us. So people are turning to gold jewelry. They are turning as an investment opportunity, because during the pandemic, we saw many of the people are selling the gold jewelry to our company. So we seen the reverse way of collection actually. We paid more than our sales during some time. So people thought like this is an investment opportunity rather than a fashion object actually. That's why our sales went up, and it was going very favorable for us, and there was no problem in maintaining our GP and also net profits. So
all right,
we manage the situation like that.
All right, that's a testament to the fact that if you plan your financial management process as well, even in years of significant downturn for the broader ecosystem, you have a company here which has logged 14% growth in revenues in FY21 and is actually looking forward to more expansion and growth from here on. So let's see how that pans out. Thank you for your views, Ramakant. Let me come to you, Gurvinder. If the pent-up demand has been instrumental in bringing the manufacturing segment back on track, I want to look at the flip side of the coin. The increased costs have been putting boulders along the way, high cost of raw materials, uncertainty of demand, shortage of working capital. And that's besides, skilled labor and high logistics costs. These are all the main challenges to manufacturing companies. So your thoughts on how these issues can be addressed to put more working capital back in the hands of companies, and any lessons to share from Mitsubishi Electric India's experience?
Thank you, Gautam. So good evening, everyone. So probably, this year has been quite challenging for us from various factors. Like, for example, if you see our industry, we are into consumer durables, we are into factory automation, power semiconductors, we are also manufacturing power semiconductors, and we are into metro, suppliers of electrical propulsion equipment for metro projects. So we are a hugely diversified organizations, and as far as so since we are present in lot numbers of industries like consumer durable and factory automation, so which are which are very unrelated to each other and totally independent from each other. So sector-wise growth, so this year has been quite challenging. For example, to control costs. So the control cost and working capital has been a key initiative for all of us. So in managing cost, we tried a lot of innovative ways in bringing the cost down. So we only spend on the cost which were very relevant for us in contributing to our business. So that was a sense in which we control cost. So for example, we have a pan-India operations where we have branch offices all over India. So and if you see our PL, about 92%, and in most of the companies, 92 to 92% of the PL expenses are fixed cost. Okay, and so controlling the fixed cost is the key in bringing the profitability to the business. So we targeted to control our fixed costs, and we started like, for example, the rent, for example. So we innovated, so we shifted our corporate office from a high rental, high rental space to a medium to more, relevant rental space. And we shifted our office to a free space office, and so that by doing this way, we were able to save a good amount of cost for our offices. And that, so this thing, this was a model, this was a role model for our business, and this model was basically, we also put forward this model to all our branches also. So we told our employees to have the free office space. So whenever and free working things, they can work from home, and by that, we can save good amount of our rental expenses. The same is the traveling cost. So if you know, so traveling cost has been a key driver pre-COVID. So there was also used to be a feeling that if you, among the salespeople, that if you don't travel, if you don't meet the people, then it impacts your business. But with the COVID, we drastically brought down our travel due to the lockdown imposed by the government and due to other lot of restrictions placed by the various regulatory authorities. So even after saving about 60 to 70% of our travel cost, we were able to do better business. I mean, growing business. So we could grow about closer to 15% by significantly bringing our traveling cost down and doing the same amount of business. So this was a very big change in the business. Secondly, and then we also, apart from the traveling, for example, entertainment expenses, then we also shrinking on the velocities, then introducing the real-time, communication. For example, communication, we moved to the communication of, for example, through team meetings. So earlier, a lot of people used to go to the branches to monitor the performance, the key enablers. But by introducing the team meetings, it could we could have a better time management besides saving in our expenses. And meeting used to be more focused, relevant to the topic, without wasting a lot of time, in other irrelevant activities.
And what about financial compliance, Gurvinder? You mentioned about costs, you mentioned about how team communications have improved, but you also operate on a broader ecosystem with vendors, dealers, suppliers, all coming in together. In terms of, say, financial management, how much would you credit good financial management to helping Mitsubishi Electric grow? Because I believe that even though factory automation was stamped down, consumer durables didn't get that impact, which is surprising considering, we saw broader consumer demand coming down, but even then you managed to survive and thrive. So how much would you credit financial management, and what changed when it came to compliance?
Okay, so that was a very an interesting part on the financial management. So earlier, pre-COVID, we used to issue a lot of checks. Okay, and that we also used to get our collections, sales collection in checks, and our payments was also used to be in checks only, most of the checks. So we could get a good, lead time in our working capital. But in the COVID session, we very quickly moved to the RTGS and EFT mode of collections, and similarly for our payments also to our vendors, we very quickly moved to them. And besides that, we during in the last year when there was a lockdown for about 3 months, starting from April, last week of March, so we very innovatively introduced the cash discount scheme at from 1% of our sales. So this scheme was framed for only the 2 months of period. So by innovating, then so by introducing this kind of scheme, CAT scheme, we could get good collection, and we could also have a good working capital well in place. And secondly, as you know, we are a 100% subsidiary of British Electric Corporation. So, so we also requested and about 95% of our products are imported across our factories from various parts of the world, from Japan or from Thailand. So what we could do, we also requested, India is one of the highest interest earning. The finance cost of India is almost one of the highest in the world. So, like if you see in Japan or Thailand, the finance cost is almost negligible, about 0 to 1%. So we requested our parent organizations to increase our payment period. Okay, and so by requesting them, so we could it could help to save, and that money we could leverage in investing in our fixed deposits, and do and have some kind of interest earnings for a better working capital management. So by doing things, and secondly, we also touch upon like consumer scheme, for example, Bajaj Finance and other things, to be more aggressive in offering these schemes to our customers. So that also helped us to generate extra sales and extra collections for our business, majorly into consumer durables. So these all measures helped us in managing our working capital and having a
All right. That's a good overview as to how good financial management practices can help a company kind of be resilient even in uncertain times. Before I go to Manan, Rohit, interesting times, especially when you look at how the ecosystem itself has transformed from that order to cash cycle. Any initial thoughts on that from what you've heard with what Gurvinder has said and what Ramakant has said?
Yeah, I think again the digitization of payments. I think for many companies, I think the processes change, right, has now become permanent, and and both the order to cash cycle as well as the invoice to pay cycle, right, the both the forward and the backward side, right. I think it's changing very sharply, right. So I think it is the right thing from a business perspective, and it is also the right thing from where the government is pushing the policy as well, right. So I think when there's both a policy push and a business level sensibility that match, right, as the UPI example has shown us, I think just take off. So actually from where we sit, I think there's going to be a sea change, and sometimes like the B2B digitization gets missed by normal people, right? Like the B2C digitization is all around us, right? Whether it is Hotstar or Flipkart or Amazon, right? So B2B digitization is happening at a furious pace across our country, and I think when you look 4-5 years out, I personally feel very excited about where it's going to take us, because if the backend processes are set, then the front end manufacturing and all the other processes can scale just very comfortably. So I think just kind of my two cents on that.
All right. Let's extend that conversation and focus more on the challenges in terms of financial compliances. Manan, I'll come to you with that. The manufacturing sector has unique challenges when it comes to financial compliance. Firms operate in different states. They need to register for GST, need geography and track filings, which can be cumbersome. Now, Sayaji Industries has diverse businesses spread across locations. So for the benefit of our viewers, tell us, how do you manage GST compliances?
I think good evening, Gautam. Good evening, everyone. So the biggest challenge is that our tax authorities work based on amendments and a lot of exceptions. If we have standard rules of GST which do not change frequently, the life of a CFO and the finance account teams becomes much more simpler. So what we've been observing is that to standardize and to automate compliance, we need some continuity in the rules and the regulations. So what we have done at Sayaji Industries is, along with using a ERP which is very robust, we make use of a lot of Power BI tools. These are reporting tools which we generally use for MIS, but these are some tools which, as a team, as a finance team or as an IT team, we can configure whenever we want. So any small amendment in GST, what we do is, instead of making changes in our ERP, going to Microsoft to make those changes, we make those changes in our Power BI tool, And then we have reports which are 90% uploadable for our compliances. So for example, when we are to file a GST return, I can simply download a report from my system, which would take care of the 90% of requirements which I need to submit. Then what I need to do is, and my team needs to do, is only look at the exceptions. There are several exceptions like reverse charge, input credit, allowable, not allowable. Do we pay GST on reverse charge on certain freight invoices? On certain we don't pay. There are multiple branches, multiple locations. We have businesses in Kolkata, we have business in Bombay, in Delhi. So we have multiple GST registration numbers. The data needs to go to all these returns on an individual basis. At the same time, the government is trying to automate a lot of things. So it's a tough thing to automate entirely. But if we can achieve 90-95% of compliance in an automated way, I think it is a big thing. At the same time, what I'll tell you, Gautam, is that for any manufacturing company, if you look at the admin team, at least 20-25% people would fall in the finance accounts team. So this entire workforce of our country, which is into finance and accounts, is more or less being used only for compliance, which I feel to a large extent is not a productive use of our manpower. So we have so many people who are chartered accountants, company secretaries, BCom, MCom graduate people who are working in industries and manufacturing sector across the board. But the majority of time is focused on compliance. So at SIG, I think we've automated a lot of our compliances. If we can make use of this manpower for a more productive use, for more business analysis, for reducing the cost, optimizing the operations, I think it will not only help the company, but also it will be like a service in the nation building.
All right. Which changes would you recommend? Say on priority, 1 or 2 changes that you would recommend from the compliance landscape. You have a budget coming up soon, so anything that you would look forward to coming as a message from, say, the finance minister or the government when it comes to the compliance landscape.
So what I would look forward is some stability in laws. So I'll give you some examples. Okay, before a couple of years, we just had TDS in a very limited scope. Since last 1.5 years, a tax deduction at source and tax collection at source has been initiated on all purchase and sales transactions. A small amendment which will not yield a lot of revenue to the government, it will just improve the cash flows of government, but it has been a compliance nightmare for all manufacturing companies. So I not only do need to maintain my compliance, but I also need to constantly check with my customers, with my vendors, whether they are above certain threshold. If they are above 10 crores, I need to update my ERP. I need to update my masters in ERP to make sure that whenever I sell goods to them, whether they are deducting TDS, if not, then I am supposed to pay TCS. So all those small changes which the government brings in becomes a compliance nightmare for manufacturers. At the same time, GST has been constantly changing. Till maybe 10 months back, we had a law wherein there was no monthly reconciliation between the vendors' sales invoices and the purchasers' purchase returns. There was a buffer of close to 20%, which was brought down to 10 and 5. From January, the credit has to be 100% matching. And there are a lot of vendors who would be filing quarterly. There would be vendors who would be filing late. So what I feel is what we want from government is clear, stable laws which are not changed very frequently. So I can't go to Microsoft and tell them, but you need to make these changes in my ERP so that I can automate it more. so hence, what I wish for is more stability in the laws so that compliance becomes simpler. Not a lot of bandwidth, not a lot of manpower, not only of industries, but also a lot of CA firms, a lot of consulting firms who are mainly into compliance. So as a country, we need to shift towards simpler rules, which are easier to comply, so that we can focus on value additions rather than just filing returns.
All right, that's a good point there. You need stability so that at the end of the day, you have systems that work, to your benefit rather than wondering how exactly to correct anomalies and then get left in the lurch. Let's keep that conversation going. Ramakant, anything to add here from a compliance perspective?
Yeah, actually, I agree. I mean, I agree with Manan saying that this stability in the laws should be there. We faced the such situation in the last 2 years. I mean, last year, one of the biggest challenge which we faced is dynamic QR code, which is, I mean, doesn't give anything to anybody actually. This only a strict compliances that should have dynamic QR code. What is the use of the dynamic QR code? Nobody knows. It's only simply simply keeping the customer and adding additional work for our organization. There are good things which are coming like HUID compulsory for us, that hallmarking is compulsory. Now they are moving gold jewelry to unorganized to organized. So we are complied with the HUID norms. I mean, we were hallmarking from 2002 onwards, but we didn't had any major setback. But we had to have. There is a confusion where whether manufacturers has to do the hallmarking and then the retailers has to do how these hallmarking, then they said that these hallmarking numbers, whatever the HUID code, will be updated in a website, and then the customer can see these hallmarking numbers outside also, just to comply with or copy some other good practices of other governments. They are doing it, but it's unfair in this big country to do it like a whisker or something like that. So that's what I want to say.
All right. We have Mr. Srinivasan with us, but I believe there's some issue in his connection. So once we get him back, I'll get his perspective on the food tech space. That has seen a lot of events happening. It's been an exciting time. So we would love to hear
I'm
from
there. I'm there.
Mr. Srinivasan is with us. Mr. Srinivasan, as I was speaking, food tech has been a very exciting industry over the past few years, and India is also emerging as a major exporter of goods and services to the rest of the world, making export compliance is another area to look into for firms. So Sugna Foods has been exporting frozen poultry meat to countries like Oman, Bahrain, Afghanistan, Bhutan, and Maldives. So could you share with us some issues with regards to compliances that you have faced, and has this changed after the pandemic?
Yeah, it has changed slightly after the pandemic. First of all, if you take Suguna Foods as a whole, our 80%, 85% of our sales is coming from, the daily chicken. That we cannot export it, and we slowly move towards to frozen chicken, which we can export to all those countries, whatever you mentioned. And the thing is that what we have done in the last 3 years is post this pandemic, and you would have seen that a lot of soya price going higher and there. So we've taken all those advantages and we started exporting to all these countries. Of course, Brazil is one of the biggest country, which is a threat for us. And the compliance is part of it. Yes, we are seeing a lot of challenges with respect to compliances. Mainly from, we cannot take GST credit for that. We are lobbying with the governments for the GST credits, because if you see poultry as a whole, it is outside the purview of GST. Now we are approaching the government for bringing the poultry inside the GST regime. So that is also we are doing it. And so that is like this, because other than that compliance portion, there is not big challenges. Now we are fighting with the government to bring the poultry industry within the GST regime. That is what our main goal would be.
All right. From challenges, let's look at solutions. Rohit, I'll bring you into the conversation here. Manufacturing firms, they typically deal with a large number of vendors, and the process of matching invoices with multiple GST registrations can be cumbersome and time consuming too, as we heard during the discussion. So what kind of tools can enterprises deploy to ease these processes? Is there a solution that can integrate with existing systems to extract data and solve this problem?
Yeah. Hi, everybody, and thank you, Gautam, for that question. So I think, maybe I'll take, before I jump specifically into that question, I'll just take maybe a little bit of opportunity to kind of speak from the other side, right? I kind of heard, Mana and Ramakant and others, right? And just like I think, we seek empathy from the government. I think they deserve a little bit of empathy from our side as well, right? And let me tell you kind of what I mean. So actually, in the last 3 to 4 years, right, the government, especially the compliance side of government, right, has decided, for good or for bad, that they're going to act like a startup, right? So now that means that they will not get everything perfect, but they are committed to moving forward and then fixing the things that are most broken, and then fixing the next things and so on, right? Which means it's guaranteed that all of us will be a little bit unhappy at different points of time, but after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we will find ourselves ahead, right? So I think that is the broad direction. Whether we like it or not, this is the mentality that the government has taken. And I can tell you from our perspective, because we are fundamentally, as many of you know, a middleware between companies and government. right? So we are constantly in touch with them, right? So we have had calls with government, GSTI and NIC officials at like 11 in the night on a Sunday, right? So these guys are really working round the clock, and they're changing national level systems in times where people find ERP upgrades difficult to do in the same period of time, right? So I think, and largely things are working okay. Yeah, sure. I mean, as Manan pointed out, some things, you sometimes question the materiality of things. Why are you doing this? And there are rollbacks and improvements that one can very easily imagine. But when you take a step back and see where all have we reached as a country, I think on the systems and processes, I find that to be a very, very sharply forward moving direction. And yeah, so I think I just wanted to throw that on behalf of, I would say, the compliance sector and so on, right? And the other thing I would just also mention is that uh, fundamentally on if you see, I think the last numbers just came out, right? And the government collections have now gone to, I think 1,35,000 crores, something along those lines, right? This number, as many of you know, was like 85 to 90,000 just around a year or two back, right? So fundamentally, what that also means, right? And it's not like the economy has galloped, right? The stock prices have galloped. The economy has not galloped by 20% a year. So what fundamentally that means is that the people who are taking liberties, right, are taking less liberties or are finding it difficult, right? And I think that's, again, as all of us as citizens of the country, right, should be happy about the fact that government is collecting more, right? Because on the personal income tax side, there's not much to go, right? So yeah, they have to collect from this side. So I think that's another thing I would say, that fundamentally the direction is right. Now it could become better, right? Now coming to your specific questions on the systems and processes, right? So companies like ours have popped up to become a little bit of, there is pain, so to become painkillers over there, right? And fundamentally, there are three areas that I would like to point to, especially for manufacturing setup, where there are lacks of invoices, which is problem number one. And problem number two is the counterparts can be all over the place, right? Like for many of them are unorganized, right? They don't even understand the difference between maybe what is an invoice versus what is a payment, right? I send the goods, now just send me the money, right? So with that, right? And at a system level, right? If you see the design of GST, it's actually, I find the design to be very elegant, right? Because it's painful, but it is elegant, because what it does is it shifts the burden to the buyer, right? And they're saying that you now figure out how to interact with the right ecosystem, right? So once the same method keeps repeating for 10, 20, 30 cycles, everybody over a period of time pushes down compliance in their ecosystem, and country becomes compliant, right? Now, the three areas are, first is invoice reconciliations, right? I think that's a very big area. Manan referred to it. I think everybody, for Gurvinder's or Mr. Srinivasan's or Ramakant's companies, invoice reconciliation is a joy that just keeps on going, right? Especially when you're doing monthly cycles, right? So I think now there are a lot of, I would say, solutions, and like company like ours provides AI based matching, all of these things which become an appendage on top of your ERP, right? And to Manan's point earlier, right, like it's difficult to change your ERP again and again, right? And to be honest, as a technology stack, if you think about it, right, India, let's say for, I don't know, let's say for Microsoft, right, it will probably be the 90th country in terms of revenue, right? So they're not going to make changes just because something is changing on your side, right? So we have to be quote unquote Atmanirbhar in that sense, right? And that's where we come in. We connect on top of your ERP, and we keep the systems updated, right? And we run the reconciliations, and we tell you that this looks fully matched, this looks definitely not matched, this looks fuzzy, and these are the improvements. Press a button and things get reconciled, right? So that's one area. Second is vendor communication, right? I think everybody over here, whether directly or their teams, right, would constantly be dealing with. See, we are a country with 3 years back, we did a survey across our customers, and we saw that I think 85% of them had outdated vendor masters, right? Like, the vendor masters would have 9999 as the phone number, right? abc@gmail.com as the so what vendor communication, right? So we are also doing decades of cleanup in our processes because of the systems that are coming in now, right? But what is happening now is, like, for example, from our tools will send automated vendor communication, right? To depending on which category your reconciliation falls in, and so on and so forth. And that that makes the job, it doesn't eliminate the manual job, but it takes it from, let's say 20 hours of work to like 20 minutes of work, right? So that much level of efficiency you can bring in, and makes it exception management based rather than full manual kind of thing, right? The third is honestly at some level, just controlling payments as a mechanism to enforce hygiene, right? So now another thing that we have just created is we have created a product, we call it Max ITC, which is like maximum input tax credit kind of oriented product. And what that ensures is from your ERP, right? The payments to it acknowledges the different kinds of vendors that exist out there, and there are broad categories. For example, you could have like a telephone company which is not submitting the kind of invoices on time or whatever, but you don't want to interrupt the payments, right? You could have people where you want to interrupt, only you want to make partial payments, and you could have very, very poor behavior vendors where you want to hold back all of the payments, right? We see a lot of our customers, right, making these smart choices, and they are getting tools now, right? Now, I think at this point of time, the government direction, we can all obviously, I mean, it's the weekend. We can take a glass of wine and speak about for hours about what we wish, right? But the direction is clear, right? For all of us, the direction is very clear, right? The tools exist now in the country, right? Now it comes down to our own mentality on how much automation, digitization, and sophistication do we want to embrace, and so that's what at least we think we can provide.
That's an interesting development where the government is actually ahead of the curve, right? And we had these discussions in the past, in these series of discussions, where the government is ahead of the curve when it comes to using technology for compliance. So it falls upon the private sector to keep up with the government. Manan, let me get you in to respond to what Rohit said. The Indian government, as I mentioned, ahead of the curve when it comes to technology, and incorrect filing of GST data can often result in notices which require a huge amount of manual effort to solve. I think GST 1 and GST 3, if there's any mistake, the problem is you only get a chance to rectify it in the annual return, so you can't do that changes. So your thoughts on what's the way forward here systemically, what needs to change? As Rohit mentioned, it's interesting that we are at a technology maturity curve where every challenge presents an opportunity for a service provider to help you as an enterprise to address that challenge. So your thoughts on all these themes?
I think absolutely, point well taken. I think I agree with all that Rohit mentioned. So I started my compliance journey back in 2005 when I joined the CA firm as an article assistant. So I've seen the changes the government has made in the IT infrastructure, the way they receive data. I think hats off to our government, especially in last 10 years. I think across all the government departments, the one department that has undergone a major transformation are the tax departments. So nothing against the government when it comes to adopting technology. The problem comes only when I want to automate my process. Today, compliance has become a less of a burden than it used to be maybe few years back. But with this all the technology boom that we are having, I want my returns to be filed at a click of button. That is where the complaint is. Hence, the questions directed to me are such that I'll be ranting against the government. But I agree completely with what Rohit shared, that government has been in the right direction, and I think we have come a long way in last 10 years. So coming to the question, I think the reconciliations. So for example, we've been talking about GST. So when we file a GST 1 or GST 3B, at the end of the year, we file a GST 9C, which is kind of a reconciliation. And now that the income tax portal, the AIS information statement already correlates the GST data, it is going to spell a lot of trouble. So Gautam, luckily, this is the first year wherein the data has been captured by the income tax department. All the returns that I have overseen or I have filed, in none of the returns, the GST data and income tax data is matching. For the right reasons, I would say. So what happens is the income tax portal is capturing data which is filed in GST or 3B or maybe in the IFF, the invoice information facility. But ultimately, a vendor would file a GST 1, or in the annual return, there would be certain changes. So all the returns that we have filed, in none of the returns, we've had that luxury of matching our GSTR turnover with the income tax turnover. Also, a lot of accounting issues. When you report your turnover, there is it's like you report it as a total comprehensive revenue, which would have elements which are beyond sales also. So I'm not sure what stand income tax department will take, but I think they will have to keep some buffer. So suppose, for example, a client has filed return with 100 rupees as a turnover. Maybe if the income tax portal is showing 105 or 95, that 5-10% of leeway, I think they'll have to give it to the assessees. Exact to exact matching of turnovers in GST and income tax doesn't seem to be likely. So this is something we'll figure out over time. Maybe next year we will start getting scrutinies or love letters from income tax department regarding the mismatches. But this being the first year, it remains to be seen. So when we file the income tax returns, we file it with our fingers crossed. Hopefully, it should not result in a scrutiny from the tax department.
Well, let's see what 2022 brings to the table. Gurvinder, let me bring you into this subset of the conversation. You mentioned in an interview given in 2019 that while increased compliance improves governance, large corporates must not bear the cost of non-compliant businesses. Now, considering the GST regime brought in added responsibility on corporations to ensure that their vendors and small businesses are compliant with regulations, where do things stand now in your opinion, and how do you see automation and digital tools in a sense resolving this issue in 2022?
Yeah, so thanks, Gohan. Thanks, Gautam. So, this point has been well addressed by Rohit and Manan. So, as I mentioned, now the compliance burden is more on the organization. So, in order to avail input credit, so you have to ensure whether your vendor from whom we are getting your invoices, whether they have deposited and filed return or not. Okay, so this is one of the main issue. This is one of the main compliance which has to be done by the vendors, and as an organization, in order to see that we don't get we get our full credit. Okay, so we also have to ensure that both this deposit and return filing has been done by our organization, by our vendors. So for this we have already now there are a lot of compliance tools available in the system, in the market, and with the help of big four consulting firms, we have already implemented the compliance tool, which is payment to procurement. Okay, so where before making a payment, we ensure that the vendor has deposited the GST or not. So in this way, we could avoid both. We could also avoid one is fraud. Secondly, we can also avoid unaddressability of the GST credit. So these days, we are getting a lot of GST notices from, as we have registered in a lot of states. We are registered in almost over 20 states. So every day we are getting 1 or 2 notices from each of the state tax departments. So in order to avoid any scrutiny issues or any notices, we are slightly well in advance in curbing those loopholes. And you see there are a lot of very small vendors. For example, travel vendors. So which are basically delaying the filing of returns of deposit tax. So, and secondly, we have also introduced one more tool. For example, the air tickets. So we are losing a lot of GST. Earlier we were losing a lot of GST on the travel tickets. Whenever employees travel from one place to another. And secondly, for example, our hotels also, since we are traveling, sometimes we are not able to, while getting the bill from the hotel, our GST number is not filled in our invoice. So for that also we are losing the GST credit. Okay. So for that also we have implemented one tool where which will fetch the data from the GST portal and give us, and for that data we will reconcile with our invoices. And then we can take the input credit. So there are situations where where in the GST portal the input credit is more available, but we have not taken the credit of the same. For example, airline tickets, the small vendors, hotel payments, CHE agents. So when we import goods.
Go ahead, Gurvinder. If I believe we've lost your connection, unfortunately, that's fine. So we'll take that strain of thought as to what needs to happen and add in one more point, and I'll bring in Ramakant for this. Ramakant, there's another rule that normal or MSME vendors, they need to be paid within 180 or 45 days of invoice creations. How do you track this payment schedule for thousands of vendors? Is there a solution that companies can deploy to simplify the process?
Yeah, we have developed our ERP, making the vendors in two categories. One is in MSME vendors and non-MSME vendors. So when we track these MSME vendors in the ERP, we mark them with the priority, and we used to pay within 180 days. We used to get reports with our ERP help. Actually, we have changed that. And also we have tied up with Threads also, the Threads platform which has come in with the help of, so the Thread platform will help us to pay the invoices in time, and we will get the extended credit so that our working capital issues were not, working capital will not be an issue for us. So both the sides, one we have developed in our ERP, and we have even there are some certain vendors who are MSME vendors as per registration, but they have crossed their limits. But still, they will hold the MSME certificates in their hands. But we cannot do anything on those things because their turnover with us only has crossed the limits which they have. They're in the statutory compliance, statutory laws. So, but if unfortunately this part is not taken care from the other side, so that we are forced to pay the payments within 180 days or 45 days, whatever you say. But one thing which we have done is the ERP correction, and then tied up with Threads so that we will comply this situation. Comply this law without any problem.
All right. As we head to the last leg of the discussion, before I come to Rohit for his summary thoughts, Srinivasan, what are your growth plans for the next 5 years, and how are you leveraging technology to help streamline your systems and create an ecosystem where, say, human resources are deployed for innovation while, say, mundane, repetitive tasks are outsourced to software or automated? If you could unmute yourself, Srinivasan.
So you would have seen that we are producing chicken, and chicken is a low-cost protein. It is for in a developing country, and what we are doing is, we got the data. The average daily consumption of egg of poultry in India is increasing at least by 10% every year. So we got our business plans quite ready for next 5 years. And what happened is, though we are improving by more than 15% every year. We are today $2 billion by top line, and we want to go by $4 billion in next 3 to 4 years. But our bottom line will go much more than that. How we are doing is, for example, we have used this lull season to create a lot of systems, organogram, vision mission, all those things. And our manpower was around 9,000 in the year 1 year before. Today we are around 7,000. We reduced 2,000 manpower. In finance department, I am not going to increase in 1% in corporate office. We got a lot of policies like, corporate office only for thinkers, not doers. Like we are creating some KPOs and other things so that, to take care of all the operations. Like this, we got some impressive plans, and our chairman, Ms. Soundararajan, is a very, very innovative person. And we got a new managing director called Ms. Vignesh Soundararajan also. And both of them are supporting me. And as far as the human resources concerned, we are giving a lot of training. We do the first time at correct time, and we don't want to repeat the job. So in this process, when we are doing a lot of empowerment, teach, learn, teach, and all these things, and all the employees are getting geared more. So we are reducing the bottom line employees more. We are creating in corporate office more managers and leaders. Whereas in regional office, we are creating all technical people, and who can have a lot of internal control. We outsourced many of our jobs. And as far as ERP is concerned, in India, we are the first person to introduce Oracle actually. And today we are using Oracle 12i, and we are likely to upgrade to next level. And we are going to use IBM as a consultant to much more leverage. And as far as the digitalization concerned, we are up front. For example, will give you. We are a poultry company. We are existing all part of India. A lot of cash collection used to come. Before that, we used all manpower to collect cash. Now we use digital system. In every branch, we have a scanner, Google Pay. So do that, the vendor is customer is directly making payment to our account. So a lot of Monday is avoided at this level. So, and like this, many things we have done at a human resource level, which we can leverage on for it. That's what from my side.
All right, big plans for big operations, and it's good to see everyone's optimistic here, from Ramakant, Manan, Gurvinder, Srinivas, and everyone is optimistic about that prospects, and we do hope that 2022 heralds a better year for Indian business. But let's get in the last word from Rohit. With the thrust on Make in India in 2022 and beyond, Rohit, manufacturing setups, they need to focus more on growth and innovation. So tell us more about some of the solutions that Clear offers, which can ease the burden of financial management so that companies can focus on growth front and center.
Yeah, great, Gautam. I think, I think the first thing is that there is I personally feel that in the manufacturing sectors of all sorts, like from like chemicals to machines to small or large manufacturing setups, right? I think there is a very big shift or consolidation happening from where unorganized is moving towards organized, right? And I think overall as a basket, the organized basket will increase very sharply, right? So I think 2 or 3 things I would just mention is that for almost every manufacturing outfit that sees growth ahead of it, right? It has to rush towards digitization. It has to rush towards, the things which they don't need to do, but they think it would be good to do, right? I think it's a mental makeup shift, right? And we, because we are I would say a technology companies that meet all kinds of folks, right? We see folks who are even today think too much about moving their email servers away from, a corner room to and so on, whereas the biggest companies in the world have moved there, right? To people who are pushing us and saying, why can't you do, this way and that way, right? Like who are pushing us and saying, we have an idea, we don't have a team that can develop it. Why don't you develop it for us and for others, right? So I think the spectrum is becoming very wide, and the people that the companies that have now mentally reached a place which are rushing towards digitization. We also see very interestingly, right, because from our data we can see who is growing at what rate, right? We see them exploding in terms of the revenues and so on, right? So if you make a cohort of technology heavy companies in manufacturing and technology light companies, you can see the behavior very, very clearly, right? Now what we see how we are designed is as a SaaS platform, right? So it's a software platform that you can access through web, mobile and whatever, but it provides, I would say, on-prem connectivity, right? So it connects to your ERP, your accounting systems and so on. The other thing that we do, right? So at a base level, we help you file tax, file GST, generate e-invoicing, keep the records and all of those things, right? So that's the first level, right? The next level where we are going is enabling payments and credit, right? So as many of you are aware, even the B2B payment side, right? The vendor payment side is a huge pain for people, right? I mean, you go in a CIB portal of a bank and you upload a file, half the rows go, half the rows don't go. Then you have like this whole problem key. You have a UTR number is now not in your ERP. Now some poor sort at the end of the day is making a reconciliation between what we said we will pay to and what the vendor kind of acknowledged the payment to and so on, right? So we are making tools for that as well, right? The other thing that we are getting into at this point of time is I would call it a dynamic invoice discounting kind of programs as well, right? Because a lot of the vendors are facing, like Ramakant, the first thing out of Ramakant's mouth was like working capital, right? Now just imagine this is a large company, right? As you go down, the smaller companies, the working capital crunch is extreme over there, right? Many people are happy to take, instead of 100 rupees worth of invoice, they're happy to take 99 rupees today and move on, right? So we are making platforms that can even enable that as well. And then finally, where we are really heading is essentially, Gautam, creating a platform layer where an enterprise can quote unquote log in, right? So think about like a complex B2B version of a Facebook or whatever, right? where different people have different personas and they can look at the same information, right? The problem with ERP is designed as a vertical stack, right? It is designed for your finance department, your manufacturing, supply chain to talk to each other. It's not a horizontal stack, whereas we know half the times, right, the conversations, right, is about, hey, did you get my PO? Did you make my payment? This doesn't match. This has to be fixed, right? So it's a horizontal move, kind of things, right? And we believe as the country is digitizing, those kind of horizontal use cases are going to become more and more important. And that just makes everybody's life simpler, because now at least everybody is on the same page in terms of data, right? So I would say these are some of the things that we are doing. Now, as we go along, I do believe that the compliance regime over a period of time will become simpler. And on multiple sides, right? This TDS, TCS thing. I mean, fundamentally, even the direct and indirect taxes, I see over a longer period of time coming in sync, right? And these two things talking to each other, right? But in the interim, till that happens, there are a lot of, I would say, tax credit level matches that are not happening, and people can lose capital for that. So we also make tools which can allow in the input tax credit maximization side. See, what generally we have seen is the first 80%, right? A dedicated, sincere team covers, right? The next 15%, right? A team that's ready to kill itself, right? And go the extra mile. They can even get there, right? Last 5 to 7%, people just give up on it because it's too difficult, right? Because it's too old and a vendor that just cannot be chased and this and that, right? What we are making tools is which travels even to the last mile, right? And I think 5-7% here and there, right, adds up, right? It's not small, right? It sounds small in the beginning, but at the end of the year, it matches between what guidance you gave to the markets versus where you land up right now, right? And it has an impact. So those are the few things that we are doing, and we believe these solutions will become very commonplace as the kind of times move on.
All right. Before we wrap up, a quick word from you, Manan.
I think what we need to do is either the finance accounts team need to reach out to Rohit and his team, or companies like his, or maybe invest a lot more on IT assets. So we as a company have the rule that for every 5 to 7 people in accounts and finance team, we need to have one IT guy who will help us with all the customization and who will help us with all the automation. So unless you can afford such a team, I think we need to have companies who would fill these gaps. So I think,
and that's where Clear comes in. And that's the interesting part of this ecosystem, where the changing face of compliance is powered by technology, where for every adversity, there is an opportunity, where companies like Clear are presenting solutions to their enterprise clients to overcome the issues that we have discussed. But there's lots more to come, but we have run out of time. On that note, it's time to conclude our virtual panel discussion titled Automating Compliances in the Manufacturing Sector to put India on the roadmap to a $5 trillion economy. I'd like to thank everyone on the panel for joining us on this talk and, of course, sharing your experiences and insights on the topic. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in as well. A reminder to fill out the survey form available online before you leave and submit it to us. And finally, thank you to Clear for partnering with us for today's session. Till next time, this is Gautam Srinivasan signing off. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
you.